welcome everyone back to Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. I am your host, and we are your resource for education, connections, and collaborations to support you on your wellness journey. And I want to thank my guest and sponsors, Rich. Is it Sirop? Is that how you pronounce it? Sirop. I forgot to ask you. I apologize. So Rich, Sirop, Vibe, and BAM Metrics for these sponsored appearances that makes Mindful Mondays possible. And you're going to love my guest today because you want to talk about reinventing your life. That is definitely one thing Rich has done. He has gone from Emmy Award-winning producer of shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to a transformational coach. And Rich has spent decades helping individuals and teams unlock their potential and step into their best selves. So he has guided celebrities to find their authentic voice and coached contestants to transform fear into confidence. And now he's here to share with you his unique insights and strategies that have changed countless lives. Rich, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. What a great introduction.
Yeah, I mean, that is just, I mean, that I think is pretty exciting. I've watched those shows and, you know, some of the people that I saw that you had talked about in your bio, it's like, that has to be quite incredible. But that's where you started, right? Your career was in television?
Yeah, I mean, I started in game shows. I got hired for one day as the receptionist at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And they said, it's only a one-day job. And then after a day, they said, do you want to come back for a second day? And that became a week, and it became a month. And within not even a lot of time, maybe 3 years, I worked my way up to run that show, to become the executive producer of the whole show.
Wow. That had to be incredible. So what are some of the shows you worked for? Because I'm assuming that was just one of them. You said
yeah,
a number of them.
I've worked for Bobby Flay on a cooking show called Hot Off the Grill with Bobby Flay. I worked for talk shows, like there was a show called Fox After Breakfast. I was the executive producer of the Meredith Vieira show. You, of course, remember Meredith from the Today Show. She had her own talk show. I worked with Betty White and Regis Philbin on $1 Million Password, which was crazy because Betty White is Password. I've done a show called Switch and Flipside, just so many different shows over the course of my career.
Wow. Yeah. And I got to say, Betty White has always been one of my favorites, whether it's Golden Girls or her antics in movies or whatever. I mean, she's really good at capturing people and making them laugh. But maybe you can tell us, what is that world like?
You know, it's really interesting because everybody who's really successful in that world, all of the different personalities you encounter, the thing that they have is they have always believed they were that person. They never, even before they had the success, they knew in their mind, this is who I am, this is my identity, and it was a matter of time for them. And so Betty White, they're all authentic. The people that are excellent are authentic, and they have their own voice. And so, like, when I worked with Regis Philbin on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and one time Regis had a question come up, and the question was, which one of these deserts has red sand? And he read it, which one of these desserts has red sand? And for me, you know, at that time, I would have crumbled. I would have been like, I just made the biggest mistake and I look like a fool. And Regis didn't care. He was just like, I know who I am. I know my talent level. The audience laughed. He then read all the choices that way. He made a bit out of it. He said, is it the Sahara dessert? The Mojave dessert? And so watching him and just saying like, oh, wow, this is somebody who has so much confidence that he even turns his mistakes into opportunities, which I think, you know, that is a lesson that I got early in life from all of these different people who were on these shows, is whenever they faced adversity, they turn that into an opportunity for growth and bigger success. And, you know, Betty White, the same thing. You know, Betty White she just, her career constantly had rebirths. You know, so many people, she never believed the stories that so many people are told. You're too old now. You know, the Golden Girls, you know, what a great show. And TV executives, I'm surprised they ever put that show on the air because they're always looking for a younger demo. But that show still has legs today because it was funny, because those women believed in the product. And then even after that show, Betty White was older when she did that show, but she just kept reinventing herself until she was on Saturday Night Live. And she was, you know, they actually created a petition to get Betty White on Saturday Night Live. That's how many people loved her. And so Meredith Vieira, same thing. Meredith is somebody who was so authentic, just so real. And we used to say, she had the ability to cut through glass. And what I mean by that is she would look into the camera and she was looking right into the person that was watching her. You were right in that room with her. That glass that separated the two of you, that screen disappeared. And when she talked to you about something that meant something to her, something she went through, something she cared about, when you were at home, you felt like she was your friend and she was right there with you. And that is really the secret, that confidence and that ability to just know who you are and push through it. Meredith, when she was on a show called 57th Street, I think it was, and then she was on 60 Minutes, and she wanted to raise her kids and she wanted to be with her kids, and she ended up not being able to continue at 60 Minutes, and she went back and she was a mom and she raised her kids. And some people could have said, okay, that's it, that part of my life is over, but she didn't. And then she ended up on The View, which led to the Today Show, which led to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and she's still on the air. She's close to, I don't know how old she is now, but she's had a long career and she's doing 25 words or less. She's still doing it. So that to me is the ingredient, is just knowing your identity, believing that identity to be true, not saying, someday I'm going to be this.
Right.
Saying, I am this. I am this right now.
Yeah, so many things there. And so I was to say, besides the fact that Betty White is one of my favorites, as a matter of fact, I was just rewatching some Boston Legal where she's in there. I mean, her humor is for me anyway, is very funny. But I as someone watching all these stars and stuff on TV, I've always thought that if you see them kind of play the same type of role and have the same kind of thing, that's probably pretty true to who they are in life. Would you say that is true, or are they still really, really good at acting?
It really depends on the person. So some people, when I produced a talk show, oftentimes celebrities would come on the show and they might be known for something, that they did, like something amazing. And they say, the only thing I don't want to talk about is that thing, because now I want to do this thing. And you would say, what are you talking about? This is why people love you so much. But you have to respect that, that's what I love about Robert Plant. Robert Plant was like in Led Zeppelin, and then all of a sudden he's singing with Alison Krauss doing bluegrass, totally different than what he did, because he believes in his art and his authentic voice and his message, and he's not going to listen to somebody else say, that needs to be your thing. I do think Regis was 100% Regis. The person that you saw on camera was Regis. Meredith is Meredith. Like, people who have their own talk shows that last for years, they're giving themselves every day. It's an exaggerated version, but that's who they are. But then you have people who are, comedians who really deep down want to change the world. And so, look at Robin Williams. Robin Williams, one of the most prolific comedians in the history of comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Went on to become one of the most prolific actors and really changed the way that you thought about things through movies like Patch Adams, or what's the movie with Will? I can't think of it. The one in Boston. How do you like them apples?
Oh, yeah.
Good Will Hunting. Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he just wanted to be something else, and he followed his voice. So yeah, I think it depends on the person.
Yeah, I always remembered him from Mork and Mindy.
Oh my God, Mork and Mindy. That's where I grew up on Mork and Mindy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm going to show my age, but I'm like with Betty White. It's only a number, so I'm just getting
Betty
started.
White, by the way, she was so generous. And that's another thing too. That's why she had a long career. I think sometimes in entertainment, there can be volatile personalities, but the people who are cool and kind, they have the long careers because the producers remember that. And when they fall, people help them back up. And Betty White, when she came to me, I don't know if you remember, but Betty White was married to the original host of Password. So she went on Password. She ended up marrying the host, and he unfortunately passed away, and he was the love of her life. She never got remarried. And when she came on the reboot of Password that Regis was hosting, she was backstage with me, and she goes, I just want to warn you, I slept with the last host. And I thought, this isn't on camera. This is just me and her. Mm-hmm. And she gave me that moment that I'll never forget. It was so generous and kind and amazing that I always remember that moment from Betty White.
Yeah, I would have too. That's incredible. So is there one thing that you saw that you just said, "Ah, I get it. That's how they're made. That's why they're made how they're made for this." I mean, was there a moment like that with working with
Yeah,
all
it's
this?
mindset. It's totally mindset. It's like when the first real big I worked with a lot of big talents, right? So I worked with Bobby
Mhm.
Flay, and he went on to, at the time, he was not the Bobby Flay that we know now, but he went on to massive success. But I was a lower level producer working my way up. And then once you become the executive producer, you really get to know the talent. In fact, one of my jobs was to give jokes to the talent in their ear while they're on stage. They were a little earpiece. So I have
Mhm.
to know their voice as though it's my own voice. I have to hear their voice in my head and do it. And so the first big talent I worked with was Regis at that level. And, Regis just believed in himself. Like he had such belief in who he was. And he started out young, and he was on the Joey Bishop show as a sidekick for a while. And that went really poorly for him, actually. He got fired on the air, and it caused him a lot of pain. But he rebounded. He didn't let it stop him. And that was Regis. Like if Regis, we would give Regis sometimes contestants on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire were just people that called in on the phone. They weren't selected, they weren't cast. So they really sometimes could come in and be extraordinarily shy, not have a big personality. So you had to kind of create a story for these people. And Regis could pull a story out of anybody. He could pull a story. I remember we had this guy, and his name was Jim, and he had nothing, like, no hobbies. He was a great guy. I loved him, but he just didn't have anything to talk about. He was shy, and he just was there to play the game. And Regis said to him, "Have you ever had a nickname?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "This guy's never had a nickname, never in his life." And he turned this whole thing into, we're going to give him a nickname. And after each question, Regis would try out a new nickname on him, and it became his thing. And by the end of the show, he was Jimbo, lovable Jimbo, and the person had the most amazing experience, and they felt accepted and loved by Regis. And that's another big trait of people who are successful, especially on talk shows. You
Right.
know, when you can make that person feel like they're the most important person in the room, Bill Clinton does that. We've had him on shows. There are certain people that when you talk to them, you can't believe how they make you feel like you're the only one there, right? And Meredith could do that too. When you make somebody feel important and listened to and heard, then they open up and they give you great content because they feel comfortable, and they're no longer in front of a camera, and they're no
Right.
longer in front of a studio audience. That skill to take somebody and put them in your bubble, and you protect them with your love and creativity, that's a skill that I've seen like really transform people's, on-air careers for sure.
Nice. So what would you say from the world of television do you now use when you're coaching someone?
There's so many things, but like one of the things is having to have been a creative and always look for the creative voice, and figuring out like, how is this a segment? Like what is the point that people at home are going to want? How do I get the message? How do I find the message? That's something that people use constantly. So like getting clear on what it is that you want, as opposed to just, I want a relationship. Well, what do you want in a relationship? What type of relationship do you want? What stopped you in the past? Those are the same questions I would ask when I was doing a talk show. So I would have people like, on to talk about finding love. And a lot of time the experts that we would have on would be so busy, we would read the book and create the segment for them. So we were creating how to find love, and then we'd hand it to the experts, say, here, this is what we're going to do about how to find love. Or we would have somebody on about like building a career or being an entrepreneur, and we would create that as well. So all of those things that we were teaching on a talk show, as opposed to handing it off to somebody else, I now use it in my coaching. So, and also like overcoming fears. When I would have contestants come on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I knew that they could change their life. When I was a producer, this is before I was the executive producer, I knew that if I could get them to feel confident, and if I could get them to feel calm, then the intelligence that they had would come to the top. But if I couldn't, they would freeze, and they wouldn't be their best self, and they might walk away with $1,000. But it was my job to make you feel so secure, so confident, that you could really think. Once I could get you into a place of confidence, if I could get you into a state of confidence, Now you could actually use the knowledge that you have to rise up to the top. And people would come on and they would need, so often we didn't talk about this on the show, but so many people went on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire because they wanted to adopt a child. And it was, it's $75,000, $100,000 to adopt a child. And they didn't want to put that out there. So we would say, whatever, pay off college debt or go on a vacation. But I knew what the stakes were. People came on there, they needed surgeries and they had no health insurance. They needed $100,000 for a life-changing back surgery or whatever it was. The stakes were high, and it was my job to get them into a place where they could be calm and confident and secure. So those skills, I've always been using, and I've used them on myself. When I did stand-up comedy for 5 years, and I remember how terrifying that was. I was like, okay, what would I tell my contestants? How did I get them into that state? My knees are shaking right now. But I think by having, I always say, like, my job is not to show you the path. I'm a torchbearer. So I know how to navigate out of the dark, and I can put the light on. I can hold the torch, and I can walk forward, and you can find your path. And that's what I did when I was in game shows. That's what I did when I was talk shows. I've done it for myself. That's what I did when I did stand-up comedy. That's what I do for my kids. I have 4 kids, and whenever they're struggling with something, I try not to hand them the answer. I try to hold the torch and let them find their way to the answer.
Yeah. Well, and then really you've been coaching all this time, just kind
Totally.
of in a different capacity. And it's always hard when you got to do it on, or at least I found it challenging when you have to do it to yourself, because it's like, these things, but you have to get over some of the things that are playing in your head to.
You're the hardest person you'll ever coach.
Yeah.
If you can coach yourself, you can coach anybody. But I had the benefit of having the most incredible mother that you could ever have, and she provided me with so much love and support and kindness that always made me feel like I have, I've had darkness too, but like having that source of love always made me feel like you can find your way. Like, you are good. You can make it. And so, my mom's a teacher. Both of my sisters are teachers. So I've been around teachers my whole life, and I think I innately am a teacher.
Just in a different way.
Totally. I'm helping you find your own answers, but I still am a teacher. My wife, I got remarried. I met the love of my life. She's a coach as well, and she's a filmmaker. So she's coached me. All of that stuff together, that leads you to find the answers. And I meditate every single morning. I have a morning ritual. I journal. All that stuff kind of helped me to find the answers that I was looking for, which I already had, which I've shared with other people. I think we're going to get into this, I'm sure, but I told you I wrote a book, and that's eventually really what led me to the answers that I was seeking, because they were inside of me, and I just needed to locate them.
And we are going to get into that, but being a producer, an executive producer, all of that going on, I mean, that had to be rather hectic. So what was work-life balance for you when you were working in the television world?
So when I was at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it was great. It was great. And it was my foot in the door. But it was a pretty good work-life balance. We were working, maybe 10 hours a day, but I loved it. And it was like feeding me. And then when I started to do talk and I got into Meredith Vieira's show, that show was very hard to produce every day because we were really trying to change people's lives and we wanted to put good out in the world. And it was such a big mission that we just gave. And I love Meredith and I wanted to succeed for her. So we gave everything we had. And my work-life balance was terrible. I was working some weeks 120 hours a week. Wow. When I first started that show, I had 2 kids. I had my third while I was there. And I love my kids. Being a dad is like my favorite job in the world. And I was sleeping across the street many nights in a hotel room because I didn't have time to commute. So I would work 20 hours, sleep across the street for 4 hours, come back and go back to work because it required that amount of work for that show. And I was asking too much of the people that worked for that show. To be honest, like I was giving it and I was asking them to give a lot of themselves. And I really needed to restructure that entire show because nobody is going to really be able to give you their best. And I wasn't giving my best, even though I thought I was, because I was working too many hours. It led me to a health crisis. I ended up having a serious lung condition called bronchiectasis, which is like collapsed bronchial lobes. And it was really, it was the stress and the amount of work hours. I had zero work life. I was eating terribly. I was medicating myself, like I was drinking on the weekends, or, going to the doctor because I had indigestion, and the indigestion caused this, and just racking up the medicine that I was taking. And it took a toll. The first year it took a toll. And I care so much about my staffs when I work on these shows. And that first season, watching my staff go through that too, I just didn't want that anymore. So we completely restructured the show in the second season to totally change the work-life balance. And we ended up doing the first 20 minutes of the show was like, basically like a roundtable discussion, as opposed to like really produced segments, which allowed us to kind of just look through the news, figure out what we're going to talk about. And that was a third of the show taken care of. So it alleviated the back end and gave people a much better life, and made me feel a lot better being able to look at the souls that, that worked for that show, and knowing that, I wasn't asking too much of them. I still was asking a lot, because in talk, you're asking a lot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the first season I was asking too much. I was really asking too much of them. And I just shouldn't have asked for that much. It was a huge learning lesson.
Yeah. I mean, I remember one of the days when I worked 40 to 60 hours was exhausting. I can't even imagine doing 120, but I know we have a lot to unpack, but we got to take a quick break from a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back to discuss the whole reinvention of you, because that is exactly what you did. So we will be right back.
Relief for PTSD, anxiety, pain, insomnia, and many other ailments. Introducing Vibe, the world's only pocket PEMF device. You place in your pocket while cooking, cleaning, relaxing, watching TV, sitting at your computer, reading, or walking. Self-contained standalone device. No drugs. No other phone or Bluetooth connections required. No monthly subscription fees. No apps to download. No Bozone. The future of medicine is in the frequencies. Come join the revolution.
Hi, I'm Bobby Aldridge with BAM Metrics. There are so many programs out there that measure your swing speed, sets, reps, your BMI, your body fat, but the one thing they're not measuring that's so essential is mobility. Mobility is the key. If you're measuring your mobility, your performance will get better and you will reduce your pain. I created BAM Metrics to make it easy for people to repeat the exercises so they could do it properly at home on their own. It's simple, it's easy to do, and from a senior to a pro athlete.
I was producing huge television shows, but I was out of balance. To motivate myself, I began writing my own self-help book. The lessons I had already learned became a roadmap to an even better future. Looking for answers led me to Neuro-Linguistic Programming. I built my confidence, became more clear on what I want, and found a path forward. That path is using everything I've learned to help others find their way forward. It all begins with one step. Sign up for my free consultation and let's get started on the life you deserve today.
So, Rich, that was a lot of hours, and I know you were like coming to realizations. But what would you say was your breaking point? Because you're not in that world anymore. You've transitioned. What was your breaking point?
I found myself. I really found myself. When that show got canceled after two seasons, it wasn't brought back for a third season. I was at home and I had time now. My mind hadn't had time to really digest anything. I'd worked from the age of 22 right up until that point. And I started to realize that I really didn't have the proper balance. I didn't have a lot of happiness. I didn't have hobbies anymore. I wasn't in touch with myself. I wasn't being physical. I wasn't eating right. And for me, realizing I needed to get a divorce. At that time, I was in a marriage that just wasn't working. and being forced into that decision and just saying like, am I going to be brave enough and do I love myself enough to actually reset my life at this point? Once I made that decision, everything started to come into to become clear. I said, oh, wow, okay. It was a huge decision. And, it was really dark. It was a dark time. But once it happened, I started to run. I started to play guitar. I started to take hikes with my son, every single weekend, 4 or 5 hour hikes, and just connect into his spirit, his young, beautiful spirit, and the trees, and feeling nature and putting my hand in the stream and just saying, wow, this is who I am. Like, I am massively connected to nature and to love. And so I then said, okay, I really need to, I need to figure out who I am and learn to love myself again. So I started to journal. I began meditation. Meditation was really hard at first. But I know from building a television career and becoming a stand-up comedian and playing college baseball that nothing is easy at first. Like you just have to work and it'll get better. So I just stuck with meditation and I stuck with journaling and the answers started to flow. And once I loved myself, I said, you know what? I think I'm ready to meet somebody. And I started to date and I met the absolute love of my life. And I couldn't believe the level of happiness that I was experiencing. And I lost 25 pounds. I changed my diet. I became a vegan and, my asthma disappeared, my medical condition, which they told me at the time that I might not even live long from that medical condition. The first doctor I went to said, you're fine as long as you don't have MAC bacteria in your lungs. If you have MAC, you're going to be in trouble. I came back, I did have MAC. And I was like, I don't like that answer. So I need a new answer. So I found a doctor that told me the answer that my mind needed to hear. This wonderful doctor at Mount Sinai. And she was like, you just need to start running. And I was like, running? I can't even breathe. She's like, start at a quarter of a mile. Just start with just whatever. And I did. I started a quarter mile and then I went to a half a mile and I ran a 10K and I just kept building and I have been a lifelong asthmatic since I was 3 years old on medicine. I am now on no medicine. I am breathing fantastically. And it's all because I found happiness and I've reduced my stress and my diet has completely changed. So once I had all of this stuff and all of this happiness, I then started to study Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is like about changing your subconscious mind and your belief systems and ordering your values and all of this great science behind the mind. And I started to adjust myself and I saw even bigger changes. And then my daughter has OCD and I used it with her and I started to see big changes with her. And so I said, this is so valuable, my experience and this stuff that I've learned, I owe it to like other people to really start to share this. And so I started coaching. And then once, oh my God, when you coach somebody and you see them change, that is even a bigger reward than your own self change. Watching somebody get rid of these old stories and start to believe in themselves. And I had this client who really just was so hard on herself and she was so upset and she was living in this place of I'm not good enough, which by the way, almost all of us, that's ultimately, if you keep asking questions, that's where we get to. No matter how great you feel, there's still something that always needs to be worked on up there that's saying I'm not good enough. And once you work on it, you get better, but it comes back and you need to keep going back. But seeing her change her life and start to feel like she's good enough and become a Pilates instructor, and seeing, another guy who's got a photography business and he's doubling his business now because he's starting to understand what his worth is and how he can go out and get it and how to set goals. It's amazing. It's really amazing to change people's lives.
Yeah. And there's so many things that you were saying in there. I mean, like one of them, so I was one that was always told that I have exercise induced asthma because I would always have trouble. They give you the inhalers and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't take any of them anymore. It's like that stuff was doing me more harm than good. It's like if you, like you said, change your lifestyle, change your diet, and do stuff, you can build up your own, lung capacity and stuff and get past that. But maybe you can share with us a little bit, because you came from a very busy, packed world, working 120 hours a week. And a lot of us have the whole monkey mind thing going on and find meditation difficult, because really you're asking that to stop and slow down. How was that process for you? Or was there anything that helped you to get to that point? Because many of us struggle.
Definitely. By the way, the asthmatic thing, just to hit on that for 1 second,
Uh-huh.
I think what we do, this is a big part of neuro-linguistic programming, but when you label yourself something, you say, I'm an asthmatic, that's really like, you could say like, I'm having asthma issues right now. But once you say, oh, I have this life condition, that is like just putting it in a bad place. Like, you should turn it into like, I've had clients who say, I have ADHD. I said, no, you're just ADHDing at a moment. But that's just a moment of ADHD, and you don't have ADHD. I think when you tell yourself a story, whatever that thing is that you think is a problem, it becomes a worse problem. You can make it a better problem by just saying, I'm just in a state of this right now. I am not this thing. So I'm glad that you have overcome.
Oh yeah. I learned that too. And it's like, you can tell me that. I don't subscribe to that. I'm like, because I know I know I can change things.
Totally. That's beautiful. So sorry again. What was the question about?
So the meditation part, you had
right.
because we all have that monkey mind going on, and we got to do this, we got to do that. We come from a society where we want everything yesterday. You were in a very busy field of working 120 something hours a week. How did you get to where you were able to just like sit still, meditate, or just be?
So I first tried to like really, I did guided meditation, and I was so uncomfortable. Like, my legs hurt and my hips were hurting and I was itchy and I couldn't concentrate. And so then I said, you know what? I think I'll get to that place someday, but right now comfort is the most important thing. So I'm not going to worry about anything I've heard. I'm just going to be comfortable, whatever that means. And sometimes I would meditate laying down. Sometimes I would meditate. I'd still be intentfully meditating. But I would meditate in a place of comfort so that wasn't part of the distractions. And then once I did that, then all the thoughts of my ego would come in and say, oh, you didn't do this, blah, 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 you forgot about that. And, oh, what about this thing that happened in your life and makes you this? And I needed to come up with something so in meditation, it's like, don't push the thoughts away. You have to acknowledge the thoughts, but don't see them from outside of ego, which is very hard to describe to somebody that hasn't gotten to the place of separating ego.
Right.
That's a hard concept. So at the time, I said, okay, I'm going to imagine that I'm looking out at the ocean, and that every time one of these thoughts comes, I'm going to put it into a boat and I'm going to push it along to the side. Either push it along to the side because it's something that I may have to deal with later, or push it out to sea. And that simple, and then I would laugh because, like, if it was me saying like, you're not working out enough, I would picture me being frantic and going, you're not working out. And I'd just push it. And I'd hear the voice kind of like slowly fade away. So I was acknowledging it, but just going, okay, you can move on. Okay, you can move on. And it was always after about 10 minutes of that the last 5 minutes would be pretty solid. And I'd be just into a state where I start to see my energy colors moving. So I started to see, like, I didn't know what it was at first, but I'd see green smoke, and it was kind of like orbiting and just moving. And really what it was my heart energy that I was shifting around in my body, which once I became more familiar with that, I was like, oh, okay. Then I saw my third eye, and I had no idea what it was. And then I figured out, oh, wow, I've actually reached a place where I'm seeing my third eye. And, even now when I meditate, though, like, there are days where my ego mind gets in the way. My busy mind gets in the way. And I come out of it and I just go, okay, no judgment. I sat for 15 minutes. Now I sit longer sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I'm going to do, because really for me, the 10-minute mark is when I start to have my most insight, which actually a lot of my coaching strategies come from that too. Like, being in that state. And I do believe in like spirit guides, and I believe that you can connect. And I get a lot of really amazing coaching thoughts and tools when I'm in my meditative state, when I can get there. So if I can get there at 10 minutes, instead of sitting for another 5, why not sit for another 10?
Right.
So I sit for as long as I can before the thoughts start to come back. And if the thoughts come back, I go, okay. But no judgment, being comfortable and find a way to see the thoughts without having them sit there forever. Like I like the boat thing, but whatever you come up with, you can put them in a bubble and pop them, whatever it is. But like that visualization helps your mind, I think, to not become fixated and sit with something too long.
Yeah, I look forward to trying that because I like that. That's kind of cool. Vision of vote, and it's like, yep, just move along, or you can go away now and just shove it out to sea.
I love it, sending it out to sea and go over the wave and down
yes,
the other
done
side.
with you can go out.
Yeah.
So,
You're not good enough. See you later.
so Rich, at one point you were unemployed. You were going through a divorce. You were forced to move, and did all this then lead you to write the book?
Yeah. Yeah, during COVID, I got to a point where I was already going through the divorce. I already moved out. At the place I was renting, they decided to sell. So then I had to leave. And I also didn't have a job. I was unemployed at that time. And I remember looking at my kids and just feeling like I can't let them know that I'm feeling this. I need to be present, and I need to be aware, and I need to be loving, and I can't have this be inside of me. So I started to try to read all these motivational books, but they were always written from a place of like, I don't know, like the person had already had received it. They've already gotten there,
Mm-hmm.
They were empowering, but it wasn't from where I needed it. So I said, I'm going to write my own book from where I am now, from having gotten to the top and then fallen down and getting back up. So I started writing a motivational book in January of that year. And I set a goal for myself financially. And I said, I'm going to make this. And it was a really high goal. And by April, I still hadn't made $1. By May, I still hadn't made $1. By June, I just had started working. And it seemed like, I don't know how I'm going to achieve this, even if I get what I normally make every week for the rest of the year. But I just kept writing the book. And every single chapter was another lesson from my life, taking small steps and second chances and, work ethic and putting good energy out there, and mindset. And as I'm writing this book, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I've shared this with so many different people and I haven't been using it myself. And it was crazy because, I was within $35,000 of the goal by December. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I got like a week left, but I did what I said I was going to do. I mean, I made all this money. I rebuilt my life. My career's in better shape. The kids were happy. I was back into another better house. And so I said, you know what? It's not about the exact number. It's about what you set out to do. And don't always look at the exact number because and then I swear, like 5 days before the year was over, I got a call from a company that said, we want to hire you to do development for us. And we want to pay you $35,000 to the penny. I made
about manifesting, right?
Yes. Manifestation is great and it's visualization, but it's action too. And I took the action.
Wow. That's incredible.
So
really when you're writing the book, you kind of relearned some lessons. What was your favorite one that you relearned when you were writing it?
I mean, my favorite lesson is the simplest, and it was the first chapter. And it's like, small steps lead to great distances, and it was about when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And so this is what the chapter was about. And it was about how I was so bad at baseball. I used to run around like this trying to catch the ball, but I never bent my arm. So they nicknamed me the Statue of Liberty. And I couldn't make the Little League team. I was not good enough to make the Little League team. And so that winter, I lived in New England and it was cold. And I went into my wet, rusty basement and cobwebs. And I just started throwing a ball off the wall as hard as I could and trying to react to it. And I started swinging 50 swings a day. Then it became 100 swings a day until I could hear the woof. And I got so good at baseball by those small steps. I went to try out for the Little League team. And I was like, I nailed it. I was so good. And I still didn't make the team. Even though I deserved to. And then I started to make excuses. Oh, the coaches, I don't know the coaches' kids and whatever. They were all I wasn't taking responsibility. So I then said, no, you're going to take responsibility. And for kids that didn't make the Little League, you go to minor league. And I was so good in the minor leagues that kids on the other team were afraid to pitch to me. They would back way up. Every time up I got a hit, I was pitching, striking everybody out, and I got the call to go up to Little League. And that transferred into becoming an all-star, becoming the MVP of my high school, leading the state of Massachusetts in hitting when I batted .615 my junior year, and eventually hitting a home run at Fenway Park, which I actually did. So, that lesson to me was like, no matter where you are, it's all about taking steps. It's just keeping that train moving and not letting anything deter you. So when you hit the obstacle of, I didn't make it to Little League, instead of giving up and saying, no, I didn't know, you take it out on the situation. You go, oh yeah, well now I'm going to up it. I'm going to go even harder towards
prove you wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was my favorite lesson. And I still use that all the time. I use it in coaching. I use it with clients. I use it on myself, when I'm trying to build my social media presence. And if you post a video and it doesn't do as well as you thought it would, you go, what can I learn? All right, this is just, there's no such thing as failing. It's all learning. So what can I learn from this? And I learn and I grow.
Yeah, that's one thing you and I agree on. I've learned to stop looking at failure as a failure. It's not. It was a lesson learned. You learn from it and you move on. It's only failure if you don't learn from it and you keep repeating the same mistake.
Totally. And here's another thing I fully believe. If you're not failing at things, then you're not trying hard enough. If you're not getting resistance, then you're not trying to go in that area enough. Like when you're facing resistance, it means that you're pushing. And the more resistance that you're facing, the closer you are to breaking through the door. And so many people, when the resistance gets really high, they get uncomfortable and they go back because they're afraid of failure. And it's like, no, just push, because you're so close. When you're feeling that resistance, push through that door.
Yeah, I love that. So you're also trained in the Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which involves working with the subconscious mind. How does that come into play when you're coaching?
I mean, it's really like, a lot of times it's language. It's language that you're using on yourself. So, when you say like, it's going for what you want, not going for what you don't want, because, when you say you don't want something, your mind doesn't hear the word don't. If you say, I don't want to gain weight, your mind hears, I want to gain weight.
Right.
So, in that case, you'd be more, I am getting in shape. You're putting it into the present state. So your mind goes, oh, you're getting in shape. Great. We're going to do everything we can to get you in shape. I am producing this podcast. I am getting on this show. And it's also like, there are great tools in neuro-linguistic programming. We use timeline therapy, which actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of timeline therapy, but it's amazing. You get put into like a light trance, and then you go either backwards into your timeline to remove limiting beliefs or, negative emotions. Or you can actually future pace people and put them into their future to actually have them. One of the great things about neuro-linguistic programming is using all of your sensory acuity to get what you want in life. So a lot of people think visualization is just, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to picture this thing and I'm really going to picture it. And that's it. And it's like, if you really want to achieve that, you need to, first off, you have to make it a SMART goal. So you have to make it specific, realistic, as if now, which means you already have it. Okay. And then you got to put a time on it, right? So you're putting yourself, you're seeing through your eyes, you're associating, you have all this stuff, and you're like, it's May 22nd. I am currently speaking in front of 1,000 people about neuro-linguistic programming. People are loving my, and you're seeing it. So you're seeing it, you're feeling it, you're hearing it, you're smelling it. All of your acuity is part of that. And then you take yourself out and you see it from outside, you disassociate and you hold it, and then you put it into your timeline. So you look into your timeline, you're floating above your timeline, you look down at May 22nd, boom, right into the timeline, and it's there. And then you look back towards the future and you see everything reset itself. So you're really working with your subconscious mind to say, this is no longer a goal or a hope, it's a memory that's already happened in the future. And then your subconscious starts to deliver situations to you and push you down the road to actually reach that goal, which I've seen over and over again with goals that I've set. The first time I heard this, I said, really? How? And then I used it and I was like, whoa, like that's crazy. Like I would get a call from somebody. I'd get an opportunity that maybe would have been there anyway, but I wouldn't have seen it. But
Right.
you start to see the opportunities that are pulling you towards that goal. And it's powerful, powerful stuff.
Yeah, I've known people that have been told that they've only have X amount to live because they've got this, and that going on. But through visualization and putting themselves in a certain state, like 30 to 40 minutes, and visualizing beavers or whatever, like working on a dam, repairing nerves and undoing stuff, they actually reversed and fixed their own conditions. And yeah, doctors don't get it.
The mind is amazing. And I actually, when I was younger, not even that much younger, when I was working 120 hours, I used to say, oh my God, I am going to end up getting a disease from this job, or I'm not going to make it past 70 the way I'm working. And I didn't realize what I was doing. I was putting that into myself as like a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I say, I have so much that I have to do in this world. I was actually sent here to do all kinds of good. And I didn't get started really until my mid 40s. And I have 55 years left of stuff I need to do. So no matter what, I know I'm here until I'm 100. I know I am. I am so sure I'm going to live to 100 because there's too much there's too much good that I need to do. So that's the thought that I don't just say it. I don't just go, I'm going to live to be 100. It's something I believe. It's something that is part of my identity. And I see it and I hear it and I feel it. And I smell it and I taste it. And it's all real. The cup of coffee that's going in my mouth when I'm 100, I'm tasting that coffee. I'm smelling it. I'm high-fiving people. It's real. It's not just like, it'd be nice to live to be 100. It's different when you put it into that place.
Yeah, definitely is. And I love that you do that. What do you think is the most important thing a coach can bring to a client?
I think it's about, so I have this thing that I love that I use on myself all the time. And one of the biggest problems that we have is we tell ourselves a story that's not true. And so I say, whenever you get to a place of beware of the future, beware of this thing that's, only in your imagination, turn that beware to be aware. Be aware of what's happening right now. Where are you right now? What are you doing right now to work towards what you want? What actions are you taking? What emotions are you feeling? What state are you in? What identity are you associating with? Get rid of beware and be aware. That to me is the most important thing, because I think we waste a lot of energy and time on this thing that's not real. Like this imaginary future that in our head we've created as 100% true. I was told that I have this thing, so that's the thing that I have, and that's where I'm heading. I was told that I'm not a good student or I'm not smart by some teacher, and now that's my story No, beware of those thoughts and be aware of what's happening right now. The sun is shining, your feet are on the ground, you're reading a book, you're growing, you're getting smarter, you're writing down your goals, you're figuring out what you want and what your purpose is. You're looking for love and you're discovering how to love yourself first. That's what you're doing. Be aware of that.
Yeah. And it always drives me nuts because I'll hear people and say, oh, well, this runs in my family. It's in my DNA. It's in my genes. And I'm it's like they just reserve to the fact that that's the way it needs to be. And I'm like, no, you have the ability to change. But,
that's what we've been told.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's been so indoctrinated to one way of thinking, that like, okay, the only way to heal yourself. I believe that medicine can work. I'm not like anti-medicine.
Right.
But I also believe that that you had another guest on who was talking about alternative medicine. It's not Eastern it's not alternative. It's like the way it's been forever. And so healing with your mind and healing with your mindset and healing with being holistic and healing with meditation and being connected to nature is so important. It's so powerful. It is the first way. Like start there. And then if you need other things, then go after other things. But like you got to start in a place of mindset, and what you're putting into your body is just as important. What you're putting into your mind is important. What are you putting into your body? I talked to a rapper the other day who I was coaching, and he's a famous rapper, and he was like, okay, so, I feel like I might be smoking too much, marijuana. So I said, well, how are you using it? Like, why are you smoking marijuana? And he said, because I'm stressed out. And so I said, where does art come from? Like, where does art come from? He said, art comes from pain. I said, okay, so by muting your pain, by masking your pain, you're muting your art. And he was like, wow. And I was like, it's all in what you're doing. Like, embrace who you are, embrace that pain and learn from it. And, like, look, if you want to do that and it's something that you like doing for fun, I'm not going to judge you, but do it once you've already come out of the darkness and found the light, then do it at that point. Don't do it to mask pain. I think the key is to really trust the voice and find the voice inside of you, because so many of us are trying to create our voice by listening to others.
Yeah.
So we're going, oh, I want to be a famous this, or everybody wants to be famous, or I want to be an author and I'm going to go read how this author made it. And you try to create your path. No, you have to quiet that stuff and get deep into your own voice. Hear that voice, because our voices are so muted in today's world because everything's so busy and clouded. We're not listening to the voice in our own head. You got to really get in there and listen, and it'll give you your path forward.
Yeah. Rich, we got about 4 minutes left, and I know you and I could keep going on forever. It's very easy to do with you. You have your YouTube channel, right? Which you also provide tips and stuff for people as well that they can follow you on.
Yeah. I have a YouTube channel. It's Rich Sirop Coaching. And I'm on Instagram, the same thing. My website's richsirop.coaching. It's pretty easy to find.
Yeah, or you can just scan the QR, or just scan the QR code.
Scan the QR. I love that you did that. How amazing.
So
yeah, and I share tips on there. I remember when I was looking for help, a lot of times, like when I would see something online, it would be like here's a little bit, but like I'll give you the whole thing. I give it all away. Like if you want to work with me, great. I'll always help you. But like I want to help people. My whole goal is to help people so they can live the life they want. So everything that I give in these videos is everything I have. You know, if I have a thought, I don't hold back. I give it away. So yeah, that's all on the YouTube channel.
Nice. So your book, is it out? Did you publish it?
I have never published it. And here's why. Once I wrote the whole book and it helped me to get to where I was, I started to do neuro-linguistic programming. So when I go back and read the chapters, they're so valuable, but there's stuff I know now that almost needs to be included. So I need to go back and be like, no, here's the science behind it. You know, here's why it works. I knew it worked, but now I feel like people do better when they have proof. When they're like, okay, why does this work? How does this work? Why is your brain working this way? You know, how does burnout work? What are some of the tools to get through it? Like, so I'm actually doing a rewrite right now, and I might publish it at some point, but you know, I use it in my coaching. Ultimately, it gave me a roadmap to help people.
Well, when you do, I think you should let us all know about it, because I, for one, would love to read it. But we've got about 2 minutes left. What do you want to leave the audience with today?
This is what I want to leave the audience with. Whoever you are, whatever you're going through, you're perfect. You are perfect just the way you are. Like you are loved, you are love, you are a light, and stop listening to that voice that's telling you that you're not. You know, there are ways out of that darkness. You know, just start to believe in yourself. Tell yourself a different story. One of my kids was feeling sad, and I said, "What's your least favorite show?" And he told me, "I can't stand this show." I said, "Now imagine if that show was on TV. Would you leave it on, or would you change the channel?" He said, "I'd change the channel." I go, "You have the same choice in your mind. You're playing a show that you hate. This show's making you feel sad. You don't like this show. Take the remote out and put on your favorite show, because it's that simple. You really don't have to keep seeing that thought that's telling you you're not good enough, that's telling you that you're not loved. Change the channel."
Great advice. Rich, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your journey and all your tidbits with us. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. You're the best. I love watching your show.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy to be on it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And anyone, obviously, Rich has been there, done that, and can help you. So if you got stuck, or you need to reinvent your life, reach out and connect with Rich. And we will see you all next week.